I had a clear defined objective for my position, and that was set up an eQMS system for go live within 3 months. And I needed to take stock of what we had and what we needed to address. So for our assets, we had that Qualio Plus library of content. We had the migration support. We had the Qualio validation system. More importantly, our company hadn't started GMP production yet. We didn't have all these GMP systems stood up. And we put those as assets because these are things that we don't have to worry about transitioning or winding down. This allowed our implementation team to be empowered in how we got things moving. Whereas our liabilities were our pre-existing paper-based system that had to get wound down. And we did have work that needed to occur in a GMP fashion ongoing in the style of facility commissioning and equipment qualification so that we could fire these all at once. And more importantly, it's a startup environment. You're going to have that limited decision maker availability. So when I first encountered this problem, the first thing I did was go into the actual Qualio program and start calling out the help teams and being like, hey, how do I do this? I don't have time to just figure this out on my own. How can I leverage the expertise of my vendor here? So we've got these assets, we've got these liabilities. How can we get started? And that comes into understanding our system's strengths and weaknesses, looking at workflows and how they function at different user levels. Because remember, the blue that one person sees is not necessarily the blue that other folks might see. And how can we consolidate everything that's here for a leaner process? How can we not just do what everybody's always done and instead transition into something better? So I started with engaging in critical conversations, and part of that was having frank discussions about what system capabilities are with our decision makers. And rather than focusing on specific language points, I was able to frame design discussions with clear, basic questions. It's not about, hey, why is this line written this particular way? Instead, I wanted to understand from them, what is your high level needs of this system? And when you're working with all these different people, especially in a startup environment where a lot of your staff have come from different companies, you need to align your language early on because you need to make sure people understand things in the same text. So say somebody is used to calling deviations or nonconformances, you need to help those people align that language together so that they understand, okay, that's what this means. I actually do understand about this and can use my old information to help me move forward. I'm 1 month into this 3-month project, and where are we? Well, we had established something critical for our future success, and that was the system for making systems. We had decided who had to be involved in each decision. We got their comfort and experience with each of these processes, and expectations as well as language had been largely aligned. So let's check back in here and say, hey, 1 month in, we've learned our system's strength. There's the ability to tag different groups in. We have easily changeable templates, libraries, potential workflows, and one of my favorite features, smart linking. The ability that when somebody interacts with a document reference, they are getting pulled into that document immediately. They're not engaging in a search process that would slow them down further. They're seeing the current information now. And we had really learned the shape of our system. We knew there were a couple weaknesses because we didn't properly understand our user limits. We needed a solution to how we're going to modify training statuses and work on document formatting. But there were solutions to each of these items. And we also had begun to get future users set up so that we could consistently maintain that visibility into the different user experiences. So for us, there are 3 user level types. There's your system administrator, your quality level role. You had your normal roles of people who were generating content actively and routing this for review and approval. And then you had your basic level folks, your bottom of the ladder people who just needed a system to engage with and register their training through. So we had gotten all of these discussions done. And now we had to respond to those challenges. So our system selectors hadn't chosen the correct user types that our organization required. And we got this rapidly rectified. One of those just do it things that made it better long term for our teams go live. And while we saw some document formatting challenges, we were able to just communicate these issues to the Qualio team and immediately get an interim plan to handle it together. So again, that responsiveness in your provider is such a huge factor. And finally, we had established, hey, we need to know how we can triage documents that'll get migrated. So non-executable documents, think of them as your policies, your procedures. We said we're going to migrate this into our Qualio templates, while executable documents that we already had on hand would get scanned and uploaded with new doc numbers assigned to them. So when I say executables, think your protocols, the forms that are associated with your procedures, worksheets, test results. And we had put that plan together. So it's come time for executing. 2 months in, we had been building expertise from the top down, because the people who are going to do the best job training the end users are their direct supervisors. So we had all department heads set up with accounts in the system. They'd all experienced it, begun to get familiar with the system and how to navigate through it and use it to its fullest degree. We'd gotten training sessions together for our system schedule. We even had material prepared, and we had found non-leadership power users. Why are you pulling in non-leadership people when you want it to go from top down? That's because we also wanted people at that base level to help provide further input, because the people who are interfacing most had more time available. So we've gotten these folks into the system, we've started training them up into it, and we've accounted for a bunch of our potential risks. So we briefed everybody on the phased approach to migration to ensure that the system met expectations before we'd gone doing all this additional work. That's cutting down rework. And we had a firm exit strategy from our paper-based system, and we'd begun to wind it down. So workflows were being cut off at that point, and things were getting started in Qualio from 2 months in. So now it came time to actually set up systems within our eQMS. And to meet our goals, we had to get a few systems up, including how are we going to handle training? How are we going to manage deviations and CAPAs and change requests and supplier qualification? And for that, we were bringing in the power users. And as things got into full swing, power users from the critical groups came in, and they helped us stress test each of these new workflows, identify pain points, and we were able to see what our training material lacked so we could improve it for the future. And by doing all of this prior to the go live, where changing the system would become a lot more difficult or potentially cumbersome, we now had this variety of perspectives in here to help us actually make a better system before we even got to that point.
And can I just point out that this was performed in the sandbox environment, right? So like you have the capability of doing that, building your workflows in that test environment prior to going live, so you're not worrying about messing with your live environment, right?
Exactly. And that is definitely one of the most critical things, is always make sure you've got a design environment to train people in. It's such an improvement for people to be able to experiment with things and stress test them in a system that isn't subject to auditing. It's literally a playground where we can test improvement ideas and see exactly how it's going to work in the live system, because it is the live system. It's just another environment within it that is outside of auditing scope.
Mm-hmm.
So we're 2.5 months in, and we're at the soft launch of our Qualio live production environment. We'd gotten all of our initial migrations completed. Everything was undergoing its final spot check. All our decision makers and department heads had gotten formal documented training, and they were beginning to approve a lot of these migrated documents and say, yep, that's the content I wrote before. These are all the modifications we agreed to. Yes, this looks good. And we were also able to bring in our power users into the live environment so that they could start to resume a lot of those workflows that from the paper system that had been wound down. So there's only one person was formally responsible for the go live at our company. This would mean a major bottlenecking of issue resolution. So we had leveraged the organic behavior that people had when they encountered an issue at work, and we let those go to their department heads by training them throughout the past month so that they could go do the organic thing and ask their supervisor first about how to resolve an issue rather than having to lean on a potential bottleneck of one system admin. So I just want to touch on system validation. And it's just like Jason said, due to Qualio's validation approach, we had started looking at everything by the end of month one. And all we really needed to do was define what our system state would be. Hey, what are our document templates? What are the requirements we're putting on these things? What is our snapshot of our system as it currently looks? And a couple of weeks prior to launch, we had a clear picture of our system. So completed our validation documents within, I think, 3 days, and able to get Qualio qualified as a supplier. So we had all of those points covered. We had no shortage of skeptics over here about the validation approach. And once they dug into the documentation, there was nothing else for them to really say. They were like, yeah, it's wow, it's actually all here. Nothing really else to do, and we had a clear pathway. So we've talked a bit about that system validation where we were. So how do we wrap up the Vector story? So our go live was awesome. All users at launch had those sandbox accounts, and their training was all done in those accounts. As soon as they were done with their trainings, they all had live accounts prepared for immediate use. We got training done within a single week and had good participation from all employees. And this rolls into how it's all worked out for us today. Since we implemented just a couple of months ago, we have over 500 documents in progress with over 400 of them effective. We have these functioning quality event systems and an approved supplier program with 30 suppliers in varying states of approval and a 95% training completion. So we haven't identified any needs for major system reworks, and it went so well that we had our first GMP production back in November. And that's what the power of some of these questions really is giving us the ability to move quickly, and we don't have to break things. We've moved quickly and accomplished our goal while complying. And that's the real promise of eQMS platforms that are well implemented and well planned for. We've got Qualio, and I'll tell you, they've done well by us. They have done awesome work in enabling therapeutic teams to bring life-saving products to market. And hey, 3 months from we picked this system to implementation is something I could not have imagined prior to this position.